Hi. Next, we're going to hear about digital creativity and new forms of narration. And about that, there are going to be 3 people speaking about the founders of Metaria ry, and they are behind the mixed reality game called Anthropocene. Here are Tuomo Karvonen, Matti Luhtala, and Jyrki Pylväs. The stage is yours.
Onko tämä päällä? Thank you, thank you. My name is Jyrki Pylväs, and I'm the artistic director of the mixed reality game Anthropocene. And my background is maybe a little bit different from most of you, because I come from the performing arts and visual arts. And Anthropocene is it's a work in progress, and we hope to release the game sometime in early 2016. It's a kind of a mobile game, I could say so. And yeah, but how about if I tell you a little bit of the background behind the project? I hope to use this as well. So, together with me, I have Tuomo Karvonen, who is our producer, here in the front row, and Matti Luhtala, who is our creative technologist, who takes care of the technical side of things. And myself, I graduated from the Aalto University in 2000. I have an MA in scenography, and I've been working as a freelance designer, writer, director, and visual artist for about like almost 20 years. And well, in my artistic work, I've always been interested in technology, and that stems from my personal interest in technology as a cultural thing, because I see it as a defining aspect of humanity. For most of you people, this is probably self-evident, but in humanities, where I come from, it's like it's a very strange thing to think about. And well, as an artist, I started examining technology in artistic ways, and this led to a series of productions about technology. And I've done performances and installation pieces around the same theme, because it's like it's such a huge thing that defines our everyday lives and humanity as a whole, that you sort of just can't define it or interpret it or, you know, do anything with it in just one piece of art. I started this work in 2003, and the first production was realized in 2005. And this series of works, which I will show some video clips of and tell you more about them in detail later, are divided in 3 phases. And started with the theme of the mythological machine, which consisted of 2 performances, a performance and an installation piece, and then a phase of, let's say, harsh reality, and the final phase, singularity and beyond. And Anthropocene is part of this 3rd and final phase, and as I see it, as a beginning for something new, like a new form of creativity, narrative, something that's been bubbling under for a while now. And during this process, I've made some artistic discoveries that are sort of like guidelines for future work, and sort of things to look at in more detail. And as all of you know, since 2003, the role of technology has vastly changed in our everyday lives, in our whole culture. 10 years ago, you didn't have social media, for example, not as a huge thing, as such a defining thing, and smartphones, which are like, have changed everything once again. And during this decade, I've been focusing on mobile devices as reality-defining technology, and especially social media. I'm interested in that as a performative. Oops. And you know, who's honest in Facebook? It's a stage. You play your part. You're making a character. It's almost like a game. And through this work, I found out that there are both demand and possibilities for new forms of narrative, whatever they might be. And well, it's better to show it to you and tell you a bit more about the background of things. So now we have a video coming. And yeah, let's start with the first production from 2005. It's called Apelion, or March 86th. And this is probably the first, maybe the only, steampunk theater play made in Finland. And I was inspired by the work of Jules Verne, the first science fiction writer, the first author who made poetry out of technology, and sort of tried to find that feeling that he had. And after that, we made an installation piece called Mechanogenesis, which was like an work, okay? Sort of, I don't know, it was an installation piece. It was more poetic space in the theme of technology, sort of like a nuclear reactor made out of wood. After that, there was a very strange performance called Uncanny Valley, which was performed over 3 years in many places. And this was like a very different aesthetic. I call it the harsh reality. There was a set consisting of tens of thousands of individual pieces and 2 actors who trashed the place. There was a story in the play about an old man in the future and his servant robot. And of course, this man is an evil man, and he sort of just, you know, makes the robot do bad things. And it was a good, clean fun, I should say. And very violent show, as you can see in the video, in the final stages of the play. And most of the stuff on stage worked. So there was like there were like tens of working electronic devices there, lights, lamps. So it was sort of, it was really real, sort of like a virtual space in itself, not like a set anymore. And that sort of led me into thinking more closely about virtual reality and technology as a defining aspect of it. You see reality through technological devices. Okay, there was a sort of an afterword for Uncanny Valley called Kairanautilus installation piece, and this is like a, how should I say it? Again, installation pieces are not so easy to define. You can't tell a story, or you can, but it's sort of like just part of the thing. But as you can see, this is still in the trash aesthetic, and there are traces of humanity in this world, and electronic devices that sort of loop the stuff that people have once put in those, programmed in those devices. So it's kind of like a, it's a, let's say a haunted place. The memory of humankind lingers in that space in electronic form. And this was a fun thing to do. We had these like full-size plastic skeletons and all kinds of like really sort of, let's say horror movie props type of things going on. And pile of trash looks good. when you light it really well. In 2012, I ventured into the world of mobile devices, and this was shown in Korjaamo Theater in Helsinki. There was only 8 performances, and what you can't see in the video is the other half of the performance. I made a really simple 80s style text adventure game, which was like I programmed it with HTML. Very simple. You just click a link and then you reach another page. But the idea was that the game was, you could only play it sitting in the audience. You were given a password, entering with the ticket, entering the theater. And that was really, really strange feeling in the audience, since half of the people didn't want to play the game at all. Other half did. And of course, after a couple of minutes, they are all in different parts of the game and sort of getting lost in their personal worlds. So that sort of like broke up the traditional, you know, community of a theater audience. And I found that really, really interesting. And I think we made a point about something there. I'm not sure what it was, but it was a good point, a powerful point. And since small-scale theater productions are so fast, you really can't go deeper into that territory without starting something new. And about a year and a half ago, I met people from Robust North company who are developed Arilyn, which is an augmented reality software. And we got to use their technology to play with it and to sort of start examining how augmented reality could be used in sort of like as a tool for making art. And you still have 1 week left to see a piece we made for an art show in Villa Rosa Gallery. This is a trailer of the thing. What you have in the gallery is just the target for augmented reality content and nothing else. In a way, it's invisible art. It changes all the time. And there's like, there's maybe 20 different videos on rotation there. And this is part of Anthropocene. It's an independent piece, but it's still sort of like it grows out of that world. And Tuomo will tell more about Anthropocene. This is a very sort of let's say new kind of production. And I'm just showing the last frames of the video. And welcoming Tuomo here. Maybe I'll just tell us the story of our main character first.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so in Anthropocene, the player follows the footsteps of a Japanese tourist who has gotten lost in Helsinki. So it's a location-based game, and the hints are hidden somewhere in the city. You have to find them using your mobile phone and an app you have in your phone. And the look and feel of the game, of the world we're creating for this production can be seen in the trailer we made for our crowdfunding campaign last winter, and which I will show you shortly in the next slide. And there's also sound, so put the master up and here's the trailer.
思い出せないの。最後のろうそくが消え、その門が開かれる。もう一度見つけなければ。遠くの島から、遠くの村から、その者たちが方々に解き放たれて私と同じようになる。風に吹かれてヒュルヒュルとさまよう枯葉のような私。でも空気が私を運んでいるわけじゃない。魂には魂の遊びがあるから。
Anthropocene is a mixed reality game about time, memory, and ghosts of the future. The gameplay combines cutting-edge technology with the ancient art of storytelling. Using location-based applications, augmented reality, and live action, our team is prepared to give you an unforgettable experience. Join us and see the unseen.
So, thanks, Jyrki. That was the trailer for our crowdfunding campaign. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what we call the new forms of narration, and what it means and what can it be, what does it have to do with Anthropocene. So Anthropocene is a location-based game, and location is narration. Every location is unique, every location has a history, people, every location is a chapter of a journey, something bigger. And that's something unique. You have to take the location into account. You have to make unique content for every location. Otherwise, there's no point on being a location-based game. The location can't just be a layer that you generate content on. You have to be unique. You have to be specific to location. You have to see every location through different eyes. You have to look at it closely. What's the history of it? What can it be? How is your major story linked to your location? And in order to do that, you really have to go learn route, as I call it. You have to harvest the stories. You have to go look for the stories. You have to look at the history of every location. How was it created? Who created it? What's the history in it? How is that related to your story? And what can it be? How is it interesting for the player? How is it interesting for you? And the stories and the material that you want to tell, they have to be unique to every location. It can't be just like a generic content. And you have to tell the stories that you want to tell so that it's relevant for the location. The pictures that you see on the screen, they're part of our making of pictures of Anthropocene. This specific picture was taken from Tullikamari in Tampere, and it's in Tullikamari we are telling a story of Valtteri, a ghost living in the Tullikamari Klubi in Tampere, a Civil War boy soldier. And when you're telling a real story of a real location, you have to play it in a way that's suitable for the location. You can't use animated characters, for example, because that would kind of break the illusion of a real space and of real persons in real time. You have to make sure that you're actually respecting the location and you're playing with the rules of each location, using the tools and methods that are suitable for each location. So that's why in Anthropocene we're using real actors. We're shooting video, and using a real live video and real live actors is not very common in the world of video games. It hasn't really been done since the 90s, when the early video CD-ROM games kind of ruined the whole use of the live actors in a video game. And of course, the problem with that is that using a real live video, real live actors and shooting with video and editing video, it's really expensive. In Anthropocene, it's also the problem is that we have a kind of a global interest and we have a global audience, but because the game can only be played locally, you have to be present on the site to actually play the game, and everything has to be shoot on site and experienced on site. You have a global audience, but they can only play locally. So the availability is local, and that means that you have a very restricted audience, making the whole production very, very difficult or very expensive, and not a lot of audience that you can actually sell it to. But the fact that you can only experience the whole thing on site also makes it more effective. When you have to be, when the content that you're experiencing in the game can only be played on location, it makes it more unique. The game is more immersive, the effects and is much more powerful. So this is once more the kind of the making of content. This time from the Asematunneli in Helsinki. On the plus side, when the game is kind of has to be played locally, it means that we can tell our partners where the players are going to be, so we can have local partners that are relevant for the game background story and for the whole unique experience. Players are situated locally, our partners are situated locally. Everything happens locally, but it has an effect and possibilities that go much more further. For example, Ruohonjuuri was our partner here with the filmings in Helsinki. And I'm going to let Matti come in on stage fairly soon, but a brief word about Anthropocene. What I should say is Anthropocene is coming in winter 2016, like Jyrki already said. We're right now making a demo version of it that's going to be tested and played in this autumn in the Helsinki Center. And after that, we have the framework and the coding right, and then we can start expanding elsewhere. And our next step, after we have the demo ready, we're going to start building a community of story collectors, following Keiko, creating their own stories, adding them to the game so that it becomes more vibrant, more interactive, and it starts building on its own. Our future dream is to create a global community of story collectors so that there will be people all around the world creating content, creating material, images, videos, their own stories that all can be added to Anthropocene, and it becomes a very vibrant, lively collection of stories. We also want to add open data to the game so that we can create a big, lively, dynamic city that lives and breathes alongside the stories, so that it's not just stories that we create, but it's a dynamic city. You can see the trams living there. You can maybe see crime statistics. Certain areas of the city become more dangerous for you to be. And next, Matti will come and tell you a little bit more about the actual production technical side of it.
Thank you. Okay, let's get on it. All right. I will give a short introduction here. What am I going to talk about? As my colleagues already discussed in the speech, we are developing an Anthropocene game. I'm going to go through development technologies and some of the practices I have found useful in this production. And I'm going to try to draw some insight to what kind of challenges this kind of indie game development faces from our point of view. And finally, I'll show a short example of developed techniques or technology called dynamic sound engine. So Anthropocene is an independent application, as we can in this figure. The purpose is to provide tools for the players to play the game. The application includes a map, a coast radar, a messaging system, and an augmented reality content can be viewed through a third-party application called ARTtech. Here are some of the technologies I've been using. It's basically built with Unity tool sets. And we're, as I said, we're exploiting a third-party application called ARTtech, which you can go and get from Robust North website if you want to. And I'm using also additional application tools such as Bitbucket, Trello, Google Drive, and Facebook groups for maintaining our repositories and keeping things organized. So I think for me, this whole production has been really challenging to come in and to find means to materialize all these great ideas into code and digital artifacts. And I think many people of you who might have been in indie productions might have witnessed same kind of difficulties and challenges, such as like loose schedules. When do we meet these people? When we can actually discuss about the content we are creating? OK, let's do that after 3 months. Fine. What should I do after that? And so on. So lack of documentation, it's been something that we've been really working on. And also in this kind of multidisciplinary team, we're having different ideas what certain terms of design, for example, mean. For me, as a technology developer, design is something different to what Jyrki thinks it is. Well, we've been having good discussions about it. It's been great. Been learning a lot, and I think we're getting there. Just to give you a short context, I started working in this group in last April, so it's been a relatively short time. But we've been developing some of our own practices and processes to get things actually realized. OK, this is now getting a bit more technical, but we're trying to kind of find our own methods to get things into a state that we can actually test them. And I think like modern agile model-driven developments, they are pretty confident to work with, and these tools gives us a framework to build our production. Certainly, because we live in different cities, we don't meet that often. We cannot have these kind of 30-minute sketching sessions and so on, but we try to keep communicating through online services, such as Facebook group, which has been really efficient. I'll come back to that after just a bit. But here we see an initial architecture of our game engine. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but on the right, you see a module called Dynamic Sound Engine, and I will give a short introduction to that. How does that take action in such a game as Anthropocene is? And if you want to discuss more about this, I would be really happy to kind of hear your comments about it and tell you more about it if you want to. Okay. Some of the other tools I have found useful for maintaining our online presence is Trello, how to keep things organized, putting them in prioritized lists. Basically, the process in this case has been such as that we meet like every 15 days. We discuss what are important things to develop, to test, iterate, and then we execute things. But still are open to keep things open-ended, which is important for such an artistic driven development practices such as we want to emphasize. And here's one example of our open-ended practice. So, it was one night, I came to home, started hacking, putting things together, found out this math thing that I wanted to develop to get things organized around a hotspot that a GPS can identify in a scene. So I just posted this draft to our face group, and what followed was pretty fun. And I think we came up with a nice new idea that all of us were able to contribute to. So here Jyrki mentioned it looks totally voodoo that we're developing. Okay, that's cool. I don't program anything but just codes. Just a random idea. Things start to evolve. We actually almost end up into a fight. Our graphic designer asked us to relax a bit. Okay, well, I did. I went to home and started sleeping. Well, I programmed those codes that Tuomo asked me to do, that you should do those blue hippos. Well, we end up doing that. And now we're having a hippos in our game. Certainly, that's just an inside joke, and I'm using these GUI elements as a placeholders. Well, it's just a fun thing to kind of game inside a game, programming. And I think we are heading more and more towards that kind of designerly way to executing things, that we are having things ready at hand, using the tools, maintaining our communication, and still kind of trying to find new forms of narration. It's not ready, definitely, at this point, but you can probably see the pattern that we are trying to find in our development community. Okay, here's an example I discussed about a few slides ago, about dynamic sound engine I've been developing. There's a source of inspiration, and you probably know how the theremin works, electronic instrument that you can dictate with your hands, adjusting pitch and volume. Really hard instrument to play with. And also, what is very common to use in games is randomization techniques. And Mozart was one of the guys who used these techniques. He had this great idea of using a lot of different kind of prepared music. And he drew dice, and based on the dice values, he chose some of the pre-made compositions. So we're doing the same with sound samples. And mapping strategies are pretty easy here. In practice, as player gets closer to the sound source, the amplitude raises. Also, when moving further away, the sound amplitude slows down. Technically, each hotspot in the game may include one background loop sound and 5 sound effects played randomly. This design, certainly we understand it has some limitations. We might expand that bit to include like 10, 15, any number of sounds. But just to start with, I think 4 sound samples provide pretty good freedom for the work with for the sound designer. And once more, here's a diagram depicting how the sound variances evolve in time. Let's see how it goes in the video. And this video actually has the hippos that you can tap and gain your mana, but that's not the point of it. The point is the movie is going to start soon, and sound, please. So while the player gets closer to hotspot, you hear the evolving soundscape. Well, let's go for it.
They 23 they 25 1 8 15 5 12 12 5 15 1 25 8 23 8 25.
Yes. And well, in this context, doesn't really introduce the immersive effect, but the idea is to wear your headphones, and while you're moving inside the city environment, you can hear the rotation via panning effect. You can hear the dynamic soundscape evolving, so it's more effective in that way, certainly. But this is just for proof of concept. So, final conclusion related to technology development. Some of the interfaces or interactions we've been developing in this location-based game context, it's really challenging to introduce such affordances that people could adapt on and learn how to use the system still. And I think there's a right kind of balance between functionality and aesthetics. We're still looking for the threshold and pushing the boundaries. So the same goes with, do we actually want to control the system? Who's in control? How much space age engagement we want to emphasize? And same goes with the demonstration or performance. So it's a mixed reality in that way as well. John generalized findings related to game development activities, an open-ended design attitude. That's one way to go, not to keep things too rigid. Randomization techniques, we're still looking for new means for controlling and providing some certain amount of serendipity while the user uses the system. And next, we really need to test things. I cannot emphasize that more, but we're getting towards that state, and I think sooner the better. Yeah, I think that's pretty much of it. Thank you.
So, any questions?
Hi, and thank you. I really enjoyed this. I love what you're doing. And I'm really sorry to bring up this very boring issue, but how do you monetize? Do you have any kind of... Because I'm really interested in how this kind of artistic experiments kind of get funding.
Is the mic on? Since Anthropocene is very much of an art game, the beginning of the production has been funded with art grants. And we're not really sure yet what the final result will be. Will it be a free game that the production will be funded with partners, or will it be a game that you have to pay for, or is it realistic to pay for an artistic experience, or it's still under discussion, I think.
How's that? Okay, this works. And one idea is, of course, a certain type of content can be, if you want to put your own content there, customer could pay for that also.
Yeah. We also, to fund the production, we had a small crowdfunding campaign at the end of last year, where the backers could get their own, could get themselves as a ghost into the game. And in the first phase of Anthropocene, when we released, you can see some faces that some of our crowdfunders.
Maybe not so much about making money, but testing these technologies as tools for narration. It's like, I can imagine that in the future we will have partners such as television production companies, theaters, dance companies. So this is like sort of, how can I say it? It's like between these worlds. So it's in a very sort of strange place, but exciting place, I think.
Because we have, the players are working in a real world, so they're working, they're moving between real locations, they're exploring real locations, and that means that there's also like a real historical content. So there's kind of this educational aspect to it, which means that we can have, or we should have, museums that and educational schools maybe, or some other faculties that should be interested in partnering with us and creating new ways to learn as well. And maybe that's something that we can be used to fund the actual production.
Okay, I see no more questions, so big thank you for, I have too many names, I forgot already. Tuomo, Matti, and Jyrki, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And in a few minutes at 9 o'clock, we're going to have Kostas Pataridis to talk about making your assembly demo. So that in 15 minutes.